It's not easy for people to determine what their goals should be in our culture, because our culture is, I would say, materialistic. And there's some positive things about that, but somewhat shallow in its ethical orientation. And so we think, well, people should strive to be happy. And I think that that's a weak aim. Not that there's anything wrong with being happy. If it happens, great, but it's a side effect of something else.
I see.
It's not a goal in and of itself. A better goal is to be courageous and resilient and strong. And one of the...
But that's a taboo today.
Well, it's because people don't understand it well. Like I've told my students that they should try to be the strongest person at their father's funeral. Mm-hmm. Because you're going to face tremendous adversity in your life, and you need to think through what sort of person you want to be under conditions of adversity. And a funeral is a very good example of that, because it's a catastrophe for everyone involved, and someone has to bear the responsibility to navigate the ship of the family through the storms of the death. And if you think about a person that can do that, obviously such a person is admirable, and there's every reason to set your goal as the development of an admirable character. Something else we don't talk about anymore. It's as if the whole idea of admirable character has been dispensed with.
Yes.
And I think that's associated with the idea, at least in part, of the tyrannical patriarchy. You know, if our culture is nothing but a tyrannical patriarchy, which it is most decidedly not, then anyone who takes forthright action in that structure is nothing but a patriarchal tyrant. Mm-hmm. It's like none of that is reasonable.
So this is a really negative narrative, this whole patriarchy idea.
It's a terrible narrative. Mm-hmm. And I think the purpose of the narrative is fundamentally to blur the distinction between competence and power. But to take down competence. That's fundamentally, like, the underground motivation is to blur the line between competence and power, and then to make anyone who manifests any competence feel as if they're doing nothing but manifesting tyranny. And it's a terrible doctrine. And I've seen it really destroy people. I've seen it destroy people. So
in what context?
Well, if you're punished every time you do anything forthright and courageous and noble by as a consequence of accusations of tyranny and oppression, then everything you do that's good is punished. And as Nietzsche pointed out, if you really want to punish someone, you punish them for their virtues, not for their faults. If you really want to hurt someone, if I punish you because you've done something wrong and you know you've done something wrong, you might not be happy about the punishment. Well, but at least it sets the scales right. I mean, that's Dostoevsky's theme in his great novel, Crime and Punishment, you know, where the murderer actually cries out to the heavens to be punished because it's the only way that he can reestablish his humanity. But if you really want to hurt people, then you punish them for their virtues. And we're definitely in a situation, and I think the universities have played a major role in this, where forthright action on the part of ambitious and productive individuals is confused with tyrannical oppression. And a lot of that's a consequence of the disturbed relationships between, well, many of the people who take that tack in the social activist domains in universities have never had a healthy relationship with someone who's masculine. And so they feel that masculinity in itself is toxic, which is...
That's what I was going to ask you next, because the first video that really hooked me, it spoke to me personally, both as a new father at the time and perhaps also as a son of a deceased father. It was where you're talking about the relationship one has with his father. Can you please elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, the proper role of a father, and a mother as well, although the roles aren't identical, I would say the proper fundamental maternal role is one of protection. And the reason for that is quite obvious, is that newborn infants need above all to be protected. The proper response to an infant's distress is, you're right and I'll take care of you right now, especially for the first 9 months of life. There's no disputing that. Whenever the infant is upset, he or she needs to be dealt with as if that upset is justified. Yeah. But then as the infant matures, and even by the age of 9 months, I would say, then that has to be, that interaction has to be made more sophisticated, because the child has to be encouraged to take his or her place in the world. And I would say that encouragement is more on the masculine side of the duty distribution. And the father's fundamental role is to produce a bounded environment in which exploration can take place. with an eye towards the encouragement of the child to develop more and more competence, to push that development. Because, and it's true for mothers and fathers, that the end goal is to produce a person who's capable of operating autonomously in the world. The father's role is to foster that sense of confident autonomy